Those were my top 7 books that were incredible. And yet there were so many that could have gone in this list that were so close to making it that didn't quite get there because I had to narrow it down somehow. 7 books on a top list of the year. That's great. That's amazing. But these books, these next 7 books, I can't leave by the wayside. I have to mention them because they were so good too, and although they didn't quite make it, they were almost there. So these are the honourable mentions. The Boy Who Painted the World by Melody J. Breman. Now, I read this as a little one-off. It was a little Kindle book I read on the way to Thorpe Park and back. It was a little cute story about a homeless boy who loves art and had to find his place in the world when he was left with nothing. And it was such a beautiful story, so unexpected. It was from the perspective of a child. I'd probably say it's a middle grade. Reading that as an adult is like, oh, like this child is so pure. And his love for art and the way he develops and grows, and you see him, you know, interacting with these other people and how people react to him. It was such a beautiful story about humanity and about art and about people, and I absolutely loved it. It wasn't so magnificent as to make the best, but I enjoyed it so much. Couldn't not be mentioned. It's such an unknown book. Like, I'm willing to bet no one watching this has read it. So I like to talk about books that haven't been mentioned much because you never know, you'll find a new favourite. And I can talk about Evelyn Hugo for hours, but you've probably already seen about and read about this book and know about this book. So I like talking about the ones that are lesser known too, because it brings them into the limelight as they deserve. The next book, book series I need to talk about is the other buddy read of the year. The big one, the massive buddy read of the year, and that is the Gone series by Michael Grant. I think back to a few years ago when I just picked this up in a charity shop for like 50p and then put it on my shelves, but was never really interested in reading it. And it was sat there and I thought most of the time, you know, I'll never get to those books. Why did I buy them? I might as well unhaul them, like never gonna read them. And I think back now and I'm like, well, Lucy, you were dumb. You should have read these sooner. But then again, I'm glad I didn't, because it meant I got to buddy read them with Brandon and Nikki. So I'm glad it worked out. This series is spectacular. It's an old series, but it holds up from the test of time. I'm on book 5 currently, and it's still as exhilarating, as exciting and mysterious as it was from the first book. So many amazing characters and character arcs and plots, so much action, so much moral ambiguity and questions, you know, what's right in this world, and how when you're in something like the Fays, you're gonna be involved in a lot of crap that you would never have thought to do in the world before. You know, your morals change in this world, and it's so interesting to see, especially since it's kids, you know, they're not developed yet. They're still going through, and they shouldn't have all this responsibility and this life-changing, world-changing magic happening. It's really interesting. I love the perspectives, the story. It's so exciting, and I love the characters and the magic and just everything. This series will always hold up for me now, and it's hilarious to think back when I thought I'd never read them. It's a great series. It's beautifully written. So amazing that it's kept its speed throughout the whole thing, and if you haven't read it, do. It's a great book for all ages. I love the fact that it's from the perspective of these teenagers, and yet I find it so interesting because I'm not a teenager anymore. This book series is great, and it had to go on this honourable mentions list because I've enjoyed these books so immensely, and they hold up in the Hall of Favourites. Although it's not a favourite of the year, it was so up there and it was so close. So honourable mention it is. Well done, Michael Grant. Well done. The next book that is on the honourable mentions list just because I enjoyed it so much, and that is Daughter of the Burning City by Amanda Fooley. Was it the most amazing, spectacular book I've ever read in the world? No, none of the books on this honourable mentions list are. But that doesn't mean I didn't enjoy them immensely. This book is so atmospheric and so mysterious and so fun. I absolutely loved it, so it went on this list just pure for fun. This book is set in a magical moving carnival, and the daughter of the burning city is the daughter of the proprietor of the carnival. So she is like carnival royalty in a way. She runs the freak show with all of her illusions because there's certain magics in this world. And then it's a murder mystery because her illusion gets murdered and she didn't even know that could happen. And then she has to find out because these illusions are basically like her family, and she has to stop it before they're all dead. It's emotional, but it's fun. The atmosphere of this carnival and the foods she describes, and the smoke and the dark, and the travelling, you know, caravans and trailers, and the bumping of the trailer. Like, you read this book and you feel there. It feels textured. It's so magical and fun and atmospheric. And I know I've said that a million times, but it's true, and I don't know how else to describe it. It's not life-changing of a book. It doesn't need to be on this honourable mentions list. It was fun and I loved the story, and that's all you needed to be. I had a great time reading it. This next book was probably one of the closest. It was in the favourites list that didn't make it. In fact, I'm going to go out and say, out of all the honourable mentions, this one is probably my favourite honourable mention. It's close to being a favourite, but I had too many favourites, so I tried to cut it down. Anyway, that was Outside by Sarah Ann Jukes. I never heard anyone talk about this book. I picked it up on a whim in Waterstones, as some of these books I have. It was incredible. Not massive, it's a fairly short story. Very similar to Farmland Sentience in the way that the beginning is very mysterious. You don't quite know what's going on, but you know something not right is happening, and you know there's some dubious, horrible, nasty things happening. And this main character is so naive and oblivious to their own situation, just scrambling around in the dark. In fact, very similar to Farmland Sentience, because the beginning of that book she was scrambling around in the dark, and this book was so tragic in what happened to this girl and what she was going through, but so beautiful in the way that she escaped and she had to learn about the world, and the way it was so humble and cute and pure and wholesome, how she discovered the world as she'd never known it, literally discovering the world, like she'd never been outside. Characters she met, there was this son and this father, such a lovely pair of characters, and I love that it's set in Scotland. I like books that, why is it like a lot of UK books are now being set in Scotland? I don't know, but I'm enjoying it. Probably as far from Scotland as you can get UK wise, but yeah, I love the characters and the humanity in this book. I thought it was beautifully told, and the way she had to rediscover where she'd come from and understand what happened to her, the trauma. And the end of this book, there was a great big twist, and I loved the way it was done, and it was so beautifully written. And this book is about, you know, trauma and exile and confinement, and what would happen to a person if you did that, and what it'd be like from their perspective to escape and understand the world from their point of view, from their stunted, limited growth. And I just thought interest mentally and, like, you know, psychology, this was such an interesting book. I really encourage you to pick up. This is like pretty much in the favourites, so I loved this book. I really recommend it, especially if you love like psychological things and oblivious, naive characters, sweet characters, horrible, tragic, nasty things, and lovely characters that are helpful, like the father and the son. They're so wholesome, and yeah, it's a great story about humanity, and I loved it. This book is A Girl in the Window by Penny Jolson. Again, pretty short one, read it in the summer. Absolutely loved this story. It was about a girl who has a disease where basically it's like extreme fatigue, and she gets tired out too easily, like to the point where she can't do anything. Loved that it represented that illness in such a real, you know, normal way. This girl just trying to do daily life, she just wants to go back to school. She can't, and she's trapped in a room. And the way she kind of overcomes, and the friends she has, and the family, you know, the way that they cope and deal with this. This book involves a mystery too, a mystery of the girl across the road in the window who she keeps seeing, but everyone says that there is no girl that lives across the road. So is she a ghost? Like, who is this girl? Is the main character just going insane and seeing things? There's this really sweet next door neighbour, this old lady, and there's this son, he's really sweet. And they form this like lovely little like companionship romance. The main character wants to go to an award ceremony funny. I can't even remember what it was for now because I read this book a while ago. Her inability to do so. It was her trying to overcome this illness, like wanting to go back to school and go back outside into the world and just be a human again, you know, a normal girl again. I love all the characters and the relationships. It's just something so sweet and wholesome about this book, and yet there was this investigatory, curious nature, almost like a, I'm not going to say murder mystery because that's not right, but almost like an investigator, an inspector trying to solve this thing. And it gets quite dark. In the end, you figure out some things and you're like, oh. And I really liked the ending and where it went and what it was about and the true thing of what it was about. Great book, absolutely loved it, so had to be in the honourable mentions. So this next book in my list is one that I didn't know whether to put it on this list, but I did. So it is The 7 Deaths of Evelyn Hardcastle by Stuart Turton. The reason I almost didn't put it on this list was because it wasn't an easy book to read, in the sense that it took a long time. It took a lot of brain power, it was confusing and frustrating at times. That was the point. Like, the point of the main character was that they're so confused and frustrated and they have to solve this mystery with each perspective, and they're in this horrible life or death situation. They're constantly dying and they have to figure this thing out, and it's confusing and there's time jumps and time travel-y kind of things. So it wasn't an easy quick read, it wasn't a simple read, but I still loved what it did and I enjoyed the story so much by the end that I thought I'd mention it. So this is about a mansion party. So the Hardcastles have invited the elite to this party to celebrate their daughter Evelyn Hardcastle's birthday. It's not really about Evelyn though, it's about the death of her brother that happened years before, and they're punishing Evelyn, and it's not a nice atmosphere. There's a lot of bad characters at this party, a lot of sinister people trying to do unright things, and they're trapped in a purgatory of like a Groundhog Day-esque world, where the main character has to solve the murder of Evelyn Hardcastle. The main character has to solve this mystery from 7 different points of views, so every day he wakes up in a different party guest, and each have their pros and cons. Some of them are physically slow or enabled, others are mentally slow or disabled. Like, not like disabled, but some of them are just dumb. Like, there's a character who's dumb, and there's another character who's very smart, but he's in a wheelchair, so he can't really move. So he has to use the advantages and disadvantages of each character. Some of the characters are not nice people, so he has to live in this brain of a nasty person and be like, am I this person? How do I separate this character from my own self? Because he doesn't even know who he is. The main character is confused. They don't know their own identity. So identity crisis is a big thing in this book. There's this mysterious plague doctor orchestrating it all, and another character who's trying to kill him every chance he gets to prevent him from solving the mystery. And then there's this other character who seems to be helping him, but he's like, do I trust it? Who is this person? Are they a good person or a bad person? Am I a good person or a bad person? I just find it so interesting and clever the way it was written. I love that each character he inhibits, like other characters, they're him as well. So if he's a certain character in this world, he knows that 6 other people are also him at the same time, all from different stages of this journey. So there are future characters that he knows he's going to be inhabiting, and he's seeing what they're doing and like, why do I do that? And like, he gets notes, messages from himself, and he figures out like why he did that back. You know, like each character reveals, like, peels back another layer of what he was doing and why. And you know, there's a future character that has a mental breakdown, and he's like, how did I get to that stage? I would never, no, I wouldn't do that. And then it happens. It always inevitably happens. And he looks back on past characters and is like, ugh, if only you knew. If only you knew what I knew. And throughout the whole book, he doesn't know the answer, and he's struggling to find this answer with a limited time frame. And there's so many interesting characters weaving in and out of this story. Really bad characters, really sinister characters. And I thought the mystery was good. I liked discovering what the mystery actually was. So it wasn't an easy book to read. It was confusing at times and frustrating at times. The characters aren't necessarily nice. You know, this, if you like, you know, not good characters and untrustworthy narrators, this book, but if you like books where you know where you stand, or if you like books that are clear cut, or you like likeable characters, this maybe isn't for you. I know that a lot of people probably would struggle with this book. I can imagine that, and I do understand that. But personally, I really enjoyed it, and I thought it was worth the read. And I obviously enjoyed it enough to put it on this list. And the last book that's honourably mentioned is going to be The Dark Descent of Elizabeth Frankenstein by Kristen White. So I read this over Halloween, and it was perfect. So as you know, I've read Frankenstein, didn't really get on with that book. Mary Shelley is a freaking genius to have written that at 19, like, wow. But my brain, it was filled with so much filler. It was not written for this time, and I struggled with that book a lot. This retelling took everything I wanted from that original story, everything I liked, every concept and idea and character from that story, and remodernized this tale from the perspective of Elizabeth Frankenstein. And it changed it, yet it kept it the same, but it was written so beautifully and so well. This is what I always wanted from Frankenstein. I absolutely love the characters in this. Again, not great characters. They're very flawed, and they're pretty nasty and selfish. And there's a lot of dark things happening. And Elizabeth Frankenstein kind of knows it, and yet she's purposefully ignoring it. And at the end, it kind of comes back to bite her. She does have a great character arc, the way she changes and the stakes in this book. I love how motivated Elizabeth is. She's so Slytherin. She will try all the means. She's very sneaky and manipulative, and yet better than Frankenstein, who is worse. And the monster, and there's another character in here. I won't tell all the secrets. It was a story of madness and morality and ignoring it but not, and life. This was everything I wanted Frankenstein to be, and I thoroughly enjoyed it. Enough so that it had to be honourably mentioned. And that is my favourite books of 2019. This video is probably, I don't know how long. I'm sorry if you've made it to this far. Well done you, good job. But I didn't want to skimp on the content of this video. Like, I could have shortened it, I could have timed myself or scripted it so it was shorter, but I didn't want to. These were my favourite books of the year, and I wanted to gush as much as I wanted to gush, and I wanted to talk about them and document these books. So maybe in a few years I can look back and be like, wow, 2019, great year, look at all these books I loved, and books I could revisit in the future, books that will always be up there for me now. Because this year was a quality reading year, as I said at the start. It wasn't quantity, it was quality, and I recommend all of the books on this list, whether they are the favourites or the honourable mentions. Please like this video and comment down below which of these books have you read or intrigues you the most, like that you want to read, because these are my favourites, these are my babies, and I'm so happy to talk and discuss any of them with you. And if I don't see you next year, if things go wrong with Copper and crap hits the fan and I don't see you, well, I'm glad I got to document this. Thank you so much for watching. Well done if you've made it to the end. I love you so much. Thank you for watching, and I will see you in the next video.